Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Battle. I am Michael Adams. My co-host tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone will be Brian King. He'll be along here in a few minutes. We have a debate for you today, which is the greatest non-Super Bowl kick. And we are joined by a six-year NFL kicker with the Cowboys, Eagles, and Bears. In 1995, he led the NFL in field goal percentage and extra point attempts, made the 1994 All-Rookie team, and as of this recording, he is currently sitting 168th on the all-time points list, which think about how many players have played in the NFL. That's pretty impressive. So we want to welcome Super Bowl 30 winner, kicker Chris Boniol. Chris, thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. As always, well, first off, I'm hyped to have another kicker on. I love kickers. I think it's one of the most tortured positions in sports. I feel for you guys, but we're going to have a Q&A for Chris afterwards about his career. Our honorable mentions tonight, these are the kicks that just missed our picks. Was the 2021 Justin Tucker 66-yarder, 2018 Gary Zerline with his 58-yard kick, which was in the NFC Championship game. A lot of pressure in that one. Matt Prater's 2013 64-yard record kick. And then just happened this past weekend, Buccaneers, Chase McLaughlin got the outdoor record hitting a 65-yarder. So kudos to him. We'll see if that if it holds through this year the way these guys are kicking now. But we'll start off with Brian. I see you're ready. Give us your first kick.
Okay. So I'm gonna start off with go way back in the time frame here. Go back to Tom Dempsey, born without any toes on his right foot. So he wore a special shoe with a flat and large surface in the front. On November 8th, 1970, at Tulane Stadium in New Orleans, Louisiana, Saints were looking for their second win of the season as they hosted the Detroit Lions. They trailed 17-16, and their drive stalled at the Lions' 37-yard line. With time running out in the game, the Saints field goal unit trotted out onto the field. Tom Dempsey attempted an NFL record 63-yard field goal, which just barely cleared the crossbar to give the Saints a 1917 win. This field goal beat the previous record by 7 yards. It was not matched again at the NFL level for 28 years when Jason Elam did it in 1998. And it was not beaten for 43 years until Matt Prater finally did it in 2013. So much, made this a remarkable kick, in my opinion. You got, of course, Dempsey's birth defect, the game situation, the grass surface at Tulane Stadium, the fact that that stadium sits right at sea level, 79% humidity that day, and of course, the duration of time the kick remained an NFL record.
So, Chris, before I come to you, Brian, real quick, I don't recall. Was that the old field goal posts when they were still in the end zone, or is it from
No, that
behind?
was the first. That was the first year that they had brought him back to the back of the end zone.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Chris, your thoughts on this kick, a record that held for that long, and back then, distance wasn't what it is today.
No, it wasn't. I think if you look at the evolution of kicking, the evolution of stadiums and surfaces, that's a remarkable kick. And I think that deserves huge consideration. You're talking about one of the best kicks of all time because you're looking a lot of times back then, snappers were just, that was their second position. Holders, they had another position. The kicker might have been the only one. And even back then, some people, that was their second position, not the case in Dempsey. But yeah, that definitely is a more challenging kick. So you look at what they have to overcome. The surface was terrible. You're outdoors, a smaller stadium. That's a remarkable kick right there.
Let's move to our second kick here, and we're talking about terrible conditions. So we are going to January 19th, 2001, AFC Divisional Playoff game, Raiders at the Patriots, known as Snow Bowl 2 in Foxborough Stadium, the Tuck Roll game. Down 10 in the fourth quarter, 4 inches of snow, with the heaviest coming from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., which is like right in the middle of this game here. Um, During that game too, temperatures a little over 20 degrees. So Pretty cold. Not the coldest it's been up there in Foxborough, but pretty cold. Under 1 minute to go, down three. Adam Vinatieri hits the 43-yard field goal to send the game into overtime. Then he hits a 23-yarder in overtime to win it. And these kicks are given credit for the start of the Patriots dynasty. Without these, we don't have what many consider the greatest dynasty of all time. Snow was so bad in this game that the first half of the game, it featured as many punts as it did first downs. So that should tell you something about the snow there that day. So just incredible kicking in that weather, but also the pressure of a playoff game in overtime to send your team to the AFC Championship game, which obviously they would go on to win. They would beat the Steelers and then of course win the Super Bowl. So Chris, how hard is it to kick in that kind of weather? How different does the ball feel on the foot when it's cold and wet? And your thoughts on a playoff last minute game winner?
Oh, I think, of course, Vinatieri's always been a clutch kicker. I mean, he's one of the probably the greatest kicker of all time. When you look at how long he played, how many huge kicks he made at the biggest game, biggest stage there is, being the Super Bowl and those playoff games. But I tell you, when you start putting snow on the ground and you have sub-freezing temperatures, the ball becomes very hard. Sometimes you don't feel your feet. Your toes are numb, and so you're flying blind, and it takes a lot. So I'm always impressed with people like him. You had Ryan Longwell in Green Bay. You have guys that play. Matt Stover played in Cleveland and Baltimore. When you play in those climates, I have a lot of respect for you because it's not like it is down in Dallas where you're kicking indoors and or New Orleans when you're kicking indoors. So I had a lot of respect for those guys. That was a tremendous kick. I would say, you're looking at a 43 yarder, certainly attainable even with sub-freezing temperatures and snow. It's not like he hit a 58 yarder in that position, but still huge kick, got the dynasty started, and then he went on to continue a tremendous career.
And even though it's not kick related, I mean, I've got a football player on. I got to ask, what were your thoughts on that tuck rule play?
Tuck rule play. Hey man, that's why the rules committee starts developing rules. The rules and fairness committee, they start looking at everything, and they're always trying to make things equitable, so everything is fair. And how can they get it right? I remember back in a long time ago in the early '90s, there was no replay, and it probably cost some teams Super Bowls. You look at Colts Steelers back in the day. I mean, but that's why the NFL, they always try to get it right.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to Brian's second kicker.
Okay, so we're going to go to September 24th, 2017, NFL Week 3. The rivalry game there, Eagles versus Giants. We have rookie kicker Jake Elliott in just his second career NFL game. First, making a 46-yard attempt with 56 seconds left in the game to tie the score at 24 points apiece. The Eagles got possession of the ball again, and QB Carson Wentz hit Alshon Jeffrey on a sideline route to the Giants' 43-yard line. He got out of bounds with just 1 second remaining. That set up Jake Elliott again for the heroics. As time expired, he attempted a 61-yard field goal with the speedy Odell Beckham Jr. waiting in the end zone to return the ball if the kick was short. Rookie kicker, he comes out there, he put all he had into the kick. It was long enough, straight enough. It just snuck inside the right post and high enough as it just cleared the crossbar. A 27-24 win for the Eagles, a win in a season that ultimately ended up with a Super Bowl victory. Personally, for Elliott, it became the longest field goal ever for an NFL rookie and the longest ever at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. Some other notes, we know that the ball travels probably a little easier in the higher elevations. This kick was made right 39 feet above sea level. And for what it's worth, this kick was made at a higher temperature than any other 60-plus yard field goal ever was at the NFL level. It was 91 degrees Fahrenheit that day.
Wow. So you kicked in Dallas where it gets plenty hot. What does the heat do to a ball on a kick and your thoughts on this play from a rookie of all people?
When it's warm, the ball's going to carry much further.
Mm.
The air's a little thinner. You have the humidity. The ball will carry well, unlike it does when it's cold. And I've played in Philadelphia. I played there 2 seasons. I've lived it. It's not an easy place to play. I don't care what the temperature is. You've got some unusual winds, sometimes moisture. And they have a grass surface there, which is not always exactly perfect. Um, that's an incredible kick at any stage of your career. 61-yard field goal, and in that stadium, that's pretty good. I think though with the weather and the warm temperatures, I think you got to consider that. But nonetheless, that was a huge kick for any person and any team.
So let me ask you on our honorable mention kick, we had Matt Prater's 2013 64-yard record. Does it make you feel any different about it, the fact that it was kicked in Denver and the air level up out there?
Oh, absolutely. Denver, the ball travels so far and hangs so well. Now, it's still an incredible kick, but you go back to the original 63-yard field goal with that tie was Jason Elam, okay, when he tied
Right.
Dempsey, okay, in Denver. It goes back to when I talk about having a lot of respect for guys. I respect those guys that make those kicks, but I respect a lot more to guys that are making the 50 plus yarders in the snow and in the sub-freezing temperatures because I think that creates a much bigger challenge than distance itself.
Awesome. Well, let's move into our vote. Brian, you can take any of them tonight. What are you taking?
Uh, to me, it's the I got to go back to the OG. It's Dempsey for me. I mean, he is just that kick was just amazing. I mean, the disability. I mean, the fact, all the things that were working against him there, and he still makes that kick. And just the fact that it stood the test of time for so long.
Yeah, Brian, you hit the nail on the head there with the test of time. If somebody doesn't break a record for what was it, 30, 40 years, or I know they tied
Mhm.
it, but then that was tied in Denver, like Chris said, that makes a difference. I think that's absolutely incredible. I would go with Dempsey as well. Chris, what would you take?
I agree with both of you. I think that kick would be to me, if you look at all circumstances. People ask me all the time, well, what's going on with all these kickers kicking such long field goals and making 50 plus 60 yarders on a regular basis consistently? I think if you look at how things have evolved over time, I played 30 years ago. I was 6 feet, 175 pounds. I would never have a chance right now to make it on a team because these guys are so strong. Soccer in the United States has evolved into just such a big sport. So all people are growing up playing soccer, all types of athletes. So you have all types of athletes learning to kick a ball, and so you look at the kid I had in the USFL with Birmingham Stallions, Brandon Aubrey, Cowboys kicker. He made a 64 yarder to put it into overtime the other day. And I mean, he's 6'2", 215, 220, but a tremendous athlete. So you look at he's got 50 pounds on me, and it's strength. And you look at the specialized training that is going into kicking from a teaching and technical standpoint, physical conditioning standpoint. It's evolved and become so specialized that there's so much access to improve. And snappers are better, holders are better, the balls are better, stadiums are better. They're closed in. The surfaces by far has really improved. So you put all those together, these guys now, with the physical traits they have and the natural ability they have a better chance to go out there and kick well. And so they should be making a lot more kicks. But you go back to the days of Dempsey, man, you're overcoming a lot. The conditions, just get the ball on the ground with. I mean, it was not specialized at that point, and so I think you take all that into consideration, leave the disability out of it. He's overcoming a lot from an element standpoint in his environment on the field. That's what makes that kick the best of all time, in my opinion.
Nice job, guys. We haven't had a sweep in a really long time. So a win for Dempsey, a win for Brian. Brian, go ahead, start out our Q&A.
Chris, the NFL kickoff rules, they've changed dramatically, since you were in the league. I'm not even sure I fully understand them yet. I mean, I know you got a landing zone, we're bringing the ball out to the 35-yard line. I guess it's safer. What are your thoughts on the current NFL kickoff rules?
Well, let's just provide a little historic perspective here. Before my rookie year was 94. Let's go back, rewind a little bit. They were kicking off from the 35-yard line. The kickers were allowed to use a 3-inch tee. Okay. So they could kick it almost out of the end zone every time. Or they could hang it up extremely high, run everybody down there. That was when you could have two, three, four-man wedges. Okay. Get hip to hip. And then everybody's has to come down and fit those wedges where you're talking about full speed head-on collisions. All right. A lot of concussions, a lot of physical collision type injuries. All right. And then they go to 1994, my rookie year. They backed it up to the 30-yard line because they wanted more returns instead of touchbacks. And then you're kicking off a 1-inch tee. So kickers evolved, and before you know it, they're getting bigger and stronger. They start hitting touchbacks. All right, so now let's change the penalty for the touchback to a 25-yard line down the road. All right, so they said now they're saying there's too many injuries, so let's move it back up to the 35, get more touchbacks. Well, they did that. Now we want more returns. So they get rid of the wedge rules. All right, and so now they have illegal wedge blocks on the back end of kickoff returns. So now they move the touchback penalty up to the 25-yard line. Okay, great. The game's a dead play at this point. All right, so now they changed the dynamic kickoff rule. We use it in the UFL, and at first I didn't like the rule because I think the kickoff play isn't a high action play in our league. We kicked off from the 20-yard line, so we had to cover every kick, very few touchbacks. But now with this new rule, I do believe it is safer because the players are engaged in contact without the full head of steam. They're not running the long run. If you have a good game on offense, you could kick off 8 to 10 times. That's a lot of running. You're talking about a lot of soft tissue wear and tear that could show up at any point in a player. I'm in favor of this rule. I think it brings more action to the game. You're getting balls are out to the 30, 35-yard line. The penalties for a short kick, short of the landing zone, is out to the 40. It's like a kick out of bounds. So I think there's some good incentives for the kicking team to put it in play, try to get them down inside the 35, which is the touchback line. And I think there's incentive for these return teams, man. You got to do a great job because you're talking about drive starts instead of being number one in the league at, let's say, a few years ago at the 22-yard line. Now you're looking at if you're out to the 32-yard line, that's pretty darn good. That's an extra first down and a heck of a drive start. Therefore, you should have more points scored.
So after playing, you went into coaching, NFL, college, most recently, currently the UFL. What went into that decision to become a coach? And if I saw correctly, you didn't do that for 10 years after playing. Is that accurate?
Oh, wow, that is accurate in the NFL, but
Wow.
I actually my right after I played, I went ahead and I was a certified math teacher. My first coaching job was at Downing Middle School in Flower Mound, Texas, and so I taught middle school and was a coach and did that for 5 years, and then I got into private coaching, doing clinics, consulting with college coaches, and then ended up being a special teams assistant with the Cowboys in 2010. And that's kind of where I always wanted to head with that is to be an on-field special teams coach, and that's what I'm still doing today.
So, Chris, you were there in Dallas, during the height of that Niners Cowboys rivalry. Week 11, 1996, you're able to nail a field goal in OT to get the Cowboys a W over the Niners. So what was that rivalry like for you? And how did you feel lining up for that winning kick?
Well, I being young, you pay attention to football and what goes on and as a fan, but once you have a team, that's your home, and that's where you make your bread. And if you go back a little bit, they had quite some matchups in the postseason for those first couple of Super Bowl wins the Cowboys had in the '90s. And my rookie year, we're out there at the NFC Championship, and in 1994, in January 95, and it was a muddy quagmire game. They jumped out on us quick, three touchdowns, and we fought back, and then we lost a close one, but also missed two field goals in that game. And you realize the severity of all these games and every opportunity to put points on the board. So the next year, all right, the next year we go over there, hit the field goal to put it into overtime, hit the game winner in overtime, and was able to now move ahead and move into the driver's seat. But they still had a great team, and we lucked out. The Packers went out there. Brett Favre went out to San Francisco in the first round, and they in the second round they won. The 49ers had home field advantage. So then we got to play Green Bay at home in the NFC Championship, which allowed us, gave us the advantage, and then go to the Super Bowl.
So let's talk about that Super Bowl, Super Bowl 30 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Going into that game, most of the media and everybody had Dallas winning and winning big. What were you guys thinking in the locker room about the Steelers? They were a defensive-minded team, of course, but were you guys expecting to win easily, like most of the Cowboys had won two prior Super Bowls pretty easily?
Well, you're always confident. You always but you respect your opponent. Um, and they had a real good running game. They were a very well coached team on all phases, special teams. So we went in there and it was a close game there for a while. And even Pittsburgh, they came out and hit us with a surprise onside, and they got the ball back. So I mean, they were in there. It was a game. It wasn't over. This game wasn't in the bag until about 4 minutes to go in the game. And then we finally felt pretty good and confident that we could come out with a victory.
You have another one, Brian?
Yeah, I got one more. Yeah. So, Chris, we talked about these great field goals, and you've had some great field goals yourself. You've had some field goals in overtime. You've had some 50-yard field goals. You made kicks in the playoffs. So, if you could look back at your career and you just look at one kick, which one do you think would you say you're the most proud of?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. It's all a blur sometimes, and you really don't think of much very often. But I'd say probably the hardest kick I had to make was my first one in the Super Bowl. I had gone out in pregame and struggled in the mid range, 35 to 45-yard field goals. Really didn't hit the ball well. Of course, a lot of nerves. Young guy playing in a Super Bowl, and man, my first drive of the game was a 42-yard field goal. And as not luck would have it, that's where I had struggled in pregame. So yeah, I went out there nervous as could be, knowing the whole world's watching, who's betting on who's the first person to score in the game is. All these things are going through my head as I'm running onto the field, if you can believe that. It's true. And I get out there and I was so nervous, I couldn't feel my legs. My knees were shaking, couldn't feel my legs. And it just came down to, okay, just see the ball and hit the ball. And it hit it right down the middle. And then you catch your breath a little bit and we're good. But that was probably the hardest kick I had to make because of my own, um, my own pressure I was putting on myself and the many things going on. You tend to block things out, but it was hard to block out a lot of those, the circumstances at that point.
So I'm gonna get you out of here with this, but I'm gonna make it two questions. So not to put any pressure on you, but you're a kicker, you're used to that. So tw 2014, you're working for the Raiders as an assistant special teams coach over there. Sebastian Janikowski. This guy had all the talent in the world, kicked forever, but we've heard stories. I mean, I've heard Gruden's story about how he kicked the field goal drunk, so what what was your impression of Sebastian? How good was he? And then my second question is we just saw a 70-yard field goal in the preseason from Jacksonville this year. What do you think are the limits of a kicker? What are we going to see? How far is this going to go?
All right, two questions. Yeah, first talk about Janikowski. I was only there for 1 year. I got there. He had struggled the year before. I think he was in the 70 percentiles. I think 76, 78, something like that. really not up to his standards of what he was doing his whole career. And really, I wasn't there to coach him. I was there to look at it systemically and say, okay, what's going on here, and why is he not prospering? Why is he having an off year? And you look at everything from the practice schedule, the practice reps, the holding situation. You have to look at all these things and try to clean up the environment around him, and then help put certain pieces together and clean up certain things that contribute to his success. And we did that. He ended up going 86% the next year. All right. He is probably the most talented guy I've been around as a coach. And that's talking about Dan Bailey, Brandon Aubrey. I mean, he's Ryan Suckup, because not only was he very strong, I mean, he's a big man, powerful, but his skill level was phenomenal. I mean, he hit a pure ball. He could hit a 60-yarder not without warming up. He was unbelievable. I think he was probably the most talented guy. Clutch, nothing bothered him. So he's probably the most talented guy I've ever been around. Um, so that being said, now the 70-yarders, I think Janikowski back in the day did have that kind of leg. You look at the 70-yarder that Cam Little hit in Jacksonville, it's a preseason game. Now, incredible kick, and he's got the ability. I think there's a number of guys in the NFL right now, quite a few that have the ability to hit a 70-yard field goal. Um, but in a preseason game, things line up a little better for you. The game doesn't count. You can take unnecessary risk at the end of a half if you want to, because there's no ultimate consequence in the regular season for that kick. If he doesn't make it, they return it for a touchdown. Who cares? It's a preseason game. Take a shot. But I think you will see, just like you saw Tucker hit the 66-yarder a few years ago, you saw Chase McLaughlin hit the 65-yarder last week. You see Brandon Aubrey with the 64-yarder. It's coming. There's going to be longer field goals, and there's going to be longer field goal attempts in regular season games when it matters. At the end of the half, even in the middle of the second quarter, I think you're going to start seeing those things.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us, Chris.
Oh, you're welcome, and thanks for having me on.
I remind everybody, hit that like, subscribe, notification button. We'll see everybody next time. Have a great night.